Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Anae Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you'll have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level. Hey vet rehabbers, wow, what an incredible weekend it was this last weekend with our online annual conference, the Vet Rehab Summit. A huge thank you to everyone who joined us live. It was so energy filled and so inspiring. If you grabbed a ticket or you're an Onlinepethealth member, remember you've got 3 full months to watch every session, soak up all the learning and take notes at your own pace. And if you missed out this year, don't worry, you can save the date for next year. It's the 31st of October 2026. You don't want to miss the next one. If you're looking to update your continuing education, we've got 3 flexible ways for you to learn with us at Onlinepethealth. Number 1, you can join for free. So you can sign up for one of our free webinars and our free limited access membership. All you need to do is go to onlinepethealth.com/free. And number 2 is you can purchase webinar access. So you can buy access to scheduled webinars and enjoy the webinar recordings for 4 weeks at your convenience. And the best way is to become a member. So you can choose from our different membership levels to unlock full access to all our live webinars, a library of 600 recorded sessions, business basics trainings, and regular research updates. Now this week, I'm joined by Moody and Grace Boone, and we're diving into a fascinating study exploring telehealth for cats with mobility issues. We talked through how the study was designed, what it looked like from both the clinician and client's perspective, and the effectiveness of remote support for pets struggling with movement challenges. Grace also shares her top environmental modification tips. These are real practical, real life advice that made a big difference for the cats she evaluated during her telehealth consultations. Now, telehealth is definitely carving out its place in mobility care, and this conversation really will give you a glimpse into where the future of rehab support may be headed. Now, before we head to my chat, a quick word from our sponsor. At Paw Prosper, we believe true pet well-being demands a 3-pronged approach: prevention, support, and rehabilitation. Our brands are trusted by veterinarians, universities, and rehab facilities alike. So whether you're looking to train, rehabilitate, or help your patients age gracefully, our brands Walking Pets, Help 'em Up, Respond Animal Therapeutics, Fit Paws, Muffins, Halos, Sleepy Pod, and Canine Carts offer effective, innovative, and proven solutions. You can sign up today to receive a one-time special gift for all our Online Pet Health listeners with your next order. And you can use this special link, pawprosper.com/OPH. All right, over to my chat about telehealth. Hey Grace, hey Carly, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, won't you tell us what inspired you to do the study for telehealth for cats with chronic mobility issues?
Yeah, so I have always had an interest in using science to develop strategies and solutions to try to reduce barriers to accessing care for caregivers and their cats to accessing veterinary care. And telehealth is sort of one of the areas that I've really been interested in. And when I started at UC Davis about 4.5 years ago as an assistant professor, this is one of the areas that I really wanted to grow my lab and use to grow my lab. And so the first grant I actually got was looking at how telehealth can be used to reduce stress, because stress is a big barrier. And the more work that we did in this area, we sort of realized that a lot of veterinarians are hesitant to using and incorporating telehealth into cat care. And so we're trying to explore non-medical uses of telehealth. And so one of the areas that has been shown to have a gap is using this to support caregivers in the home. So having those video calls so that a very knowledgeable veterinary technician or veterinarian can see the cat's home, can chat with the owner when they're at home, and just kind of understand what's going on and support them in any challenges that they're having. And so we focused on arthritis and mobility problems because that is a very, very common chronic health condition in cats. So yeah,
For
that's.
the listeners who maybe are not really sure exactly what telehealth is, because telehealth was like a saying that came about in COVID, like because we couldn't obviously see some of the patients and telehealth sort of became quite popular. Can you explain to them like how does telehealth actually work? Like how would your online like consultation work?
So telehealth is an umbrella term that incorporates a lot of different tools. So usually it's remote. So it's providing advice, support, even e-prescribing of medications, medical advice, just through remote technology. So this could be a phone call, text messages, video call, any way that information can be provided to caregivers remotely. And the tool that we've really been focusing on is video telehealth. So incorporating, for example, like a Zoom call or FaceTime call with a caregiver and their cat too. Yeah, just to provide support and reduce barriers to getting support and advice for their pet.
And it's not something that's common here in South Africa, but I know after COVID, there were a few companies that popped up in Canada and I think in the UK too, or Europe and the States that are actually like, and I see them because I'm in these groups where they're offering like job positions, telehealth job positions. So people have like transitioned literally just to consulting online. Is that something that's become more popular, or did it have sort of a little bit of a peak after COVID and then it's sort of tapering off now?
We've definitely chatted with a lot of different companies in Canada and the US, but also overseas. Like we've chatted with a company that's based in Portugal, for example. And so we've definitely seen an increase in these veterinary telehealth companies that are trying to, provide access to these technologies for the veterinary industry. Whether or not it's actually being used is, I would say, I mean, we've done some caregiver surveys. I've done a little bit of work with veterinarians and trying to understand willingness to use these types of technologies. And the feeling that we're getting from at least from the survey-based research that we're doing, is it's really not that well used, even though these technologies exist, and there's companies that exist that are trying to these technologies used by veterinarians and caregivers a lot more. So I would say it's not as well used as at least in North America, like Canada, US. I'm not sure if it's used more maybe in Europe or the UK or something like that. I don't know. Grace, do you know?
Yeah, my impression is that it's dropped off some, but it seems like the companies are interested in keeping, continuing the research and trying to go forward and keep using it. So I think it's here to stay, but in what capacity, I think is remaining unclear at this point in time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wonder, you say like, some of the vets maybe are not that keen to adopt it.
Mhm.
And I smile when you said that because I thought, vets as a profession, we're not great with change, are we? We like
Right.
things to stay the same, and I think that's where the problem is. It's that this is too new, this is too different. It's just easier to keep doing what we're doing. But is it? Is it the best for our patients? Is it the best for our clients? Is it the best for us? I mean, is maybe, because I mean, I'm sure we're going to go into more detail now about the study, but as a vet rehab therapist, I know so many changes that you can make in the home environment that can really change the life of a mobility impaired cat or dog. You have this opportunity when you're doing telehealth to be able to see the pet's environment. You can ask them, it can take you around. You can have those conversations in consults, but are they happening? Because it's quick. It's sometimes, 15-minute consults. You're looking at the patient, you got to examine them. And I'm guessing the telehealth, they have a little bit more time to be able to see all of that. So yeah, I wonder whether it's just because they're not keen to change, that they're not adopting it. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I think part of it could be that. And I think there's also potentially concerns if we're talking about actual medical appointments, as far as misdiagnosis and stuff like that, if they're missing
Yeah.
information. But I think there is certainly an element of resistance to change. And I appreciate your point because there's definitely a lot of things you can see in a home. We know that cats will tend to hide things like signs of limping and things like that when they come into the clinic. And so obviously you might need a hands-on exam to check for actual swelling or other issues, increpitus in the joint. But beside that, to see how the cat's actually walking, you might actually benefit from seeing them in the home. And of course, as you said, a lot of home interventions are what's used to help with mobility issues, and being able to actually see what the caregiver's doing is super helpful for the veterinary team.
Yeah,
Grace, can you tell us? Oh, sorry, carry on, Carly.
I was just gonna add to what Grace said. So absolutely, and so telehealth technologies are not meant to replace inpatient care, and I think there sometimes is a misunderstanding about
Mm,
that. And so it's definitely not ever, going to. Veterinarians obviously need to see patients in person, and perform those physical exam and diagnostic testing. It's just a tool that could be integrated to help make it a little bit easier for caregivers and their cats, and other pet owners as well, and some veterinarians. Um, we've spoken to quite a few telehealth companies, and one thing anecdotally that's been brought up is that this is another avenue for a job for veterinarians and veterinary technicians to work from home and work
mm.
for these telehealth companies, and it's a very different pace than a clinic environment. And it's a right, and you're kind of by yourself at your house. It's very different. You're kind of taking that clinical aspect of, out of the equation and just working one-on-one with pet owners. And some people will prefer that, and we've heard that from veterinarians who have made the switch, especially if they have, kids at home and other things that they need to be home for, and it just makes it a little bit easier for their lifestyle. And they like the pace using those technologies versus being in a clinical setting. Some people might prefer that. So I think there are some benefits there that haven't been explored. But I also just wanted to mention that I think so. We work with a lot of veterinarians, like collaboration wise, on our research, and that resistance to change has been brought up many times in terms of the veterinary industry, which makes sense because I don't think this is an isolated thing. If you look at any other industry that's, or, just the general public overall, a lot of people are sort of hesitant to start to try new technologies and incorporate them into their life. Like, for example, AI. You see a lot of people very hesitant about it. Some people are maybe more willing to incorporate these things, but I think just technology changes so quickly, and it can be hard for people to keep up and to learn about these things and understand, where they can be useful and where they're not maybe so useful.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, especially AI and things like that. There's just so much that's changing so quickly. And I think about myself. I was one of those people that were like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to do it. And then eventually you're like, well, I'm going to have to. And maybe that's where the vets are going to get. They're going to be like, I have to, I have to actually adopt this. But I think back now to like 2015, 2016, I was doing some telehealth like consultations online with people in Dubai and some in Europe. I'm helping them with like doing therapeutic exercises for their dogs. They didn't have any rehab therapists in their area. And they reached out to me, and yeah, I would do an online consultation for like an hour. And I must say, I love doing them. They would show the dog walking, and I'd ask them to do things. And the owners were just so compliant with everything that I asked them to do. And, I was able to get them to do things like check the conscious proprioception on the hind legs. I was like, okay, this is what I need you to do. And they could do it, and. So yeah, I think there's definitely a place for it. But let's chat about your study because that's what we're here to chat about. So I know that Grace was one of the main people that were involved in the study. Grace, do you want to tell us about how the structure of the study was, like exactly what you did, how many sessions you did, and then yeah, we can chat about the results.
Yeah, of course. So the way that we structured this was we had 6 video telehealth check-ins over a period of about 4 months. So it came out to about one visit every 3 weeks. And each of those sessions were structured in such a way that I asked a person about different aspects of their cat's life. So how well they were jumping up and down, how well they were able to eat, drink, use the litter box, if they were grooming and sleeping, what appeared to be normally for them, per the owner's observations, and then as well their interactions with owner or caregiver and other pets in the home if any were present. So, kind of getting at a few different aspects that we would expect to be potentially affected by mobility and get a really overview, like a holistic overview of that cat's life. So basically, we would just ask questions and they would answer, how their cat had been doing. Some of those things were on a scale, as far as like overall how well they've been doing, like to very poorly to very well, sort of that type of scale. And then other things were like a yes, no when it comes to things like, are they eating and drinking normally? It'd be like yes or no. And if no, then okay, well, they're eating more, they're eating less, what's going on there, and dig a little bit further into that. And then I didn't offer any specific advice as to like, oh, you should do this or that or the other thing, unless they specifically asked. So if they said something like, yeah, Fluffy really seems to be struggling with the litter box, is there anything you can, offer for that? Then I would say, yes, we can have a lower sided litter box. We can have a litter box that's a little bit larger, things like that that can help with mobility issues. And I would provide them that information. And so that made sure that I wasn't just dumping a bunch of information on the people that were getting the telehealth check-ins. To kind of back up a little bit, we had two different treatment groups. So we had a control that didn't get any of these check-ins. And then we had this group that got the check-ins. And so at the beginning, everybody took an overall survey that asked them about their interest in telehealth, some questions about their cat, that sort of thing. And everybody also took that again at the end. So in between, our treatment group was getting these visits and our control group wasn't. And so I didn't want to just dump a bunch of extra information on the treatment group and kind of bias them towards being more knowledgeable, more prepared. I just wanted to answer whatever questions they had and keep the appointments basic, so that they would be something that could be carried out by a veterinary technician or another veterinary professional, but not necessarily a veterinarian. So we weren't doing any diagnosis, we weren't doing any prescribing or anything like that. And so at the end, then they all took the survey again. And so that was basically the structure. And then everybody was able to receive a presentation at the end that provided all of the information about everything you could do that I was aware of to help a cat with mobility issues, anything from the litter box modifications that I already mentioned to things like providing steps or ramps to help them access beds or couches or places they want to be that are a little bit more elevated, or lifting their food and water dishes up so they don't have to extend their neck down to drink and eat. So those are the kind of things that we offered at the very end to everyone as a thank you for participating.
And were there any challenges that came about from us setting up and running the sessions?
Yeah, not a lot actually. It went surprisingly smoothly, I would say. I think the most challenging things were just sometimes internet connections could have issues, either on my end or on the other person's end. So we occasionally had issues where there was a lot of lag or the call was dropping. We had to reschedule. I think honestly the biggest issue was time zones, because I am in California and then we had participants I think as far away as Nova Scotia. And so just coordinating my schedule, because I think, let's see, we had 63 people in the treatment group. So I had 63 people I was seeing every 3 weeks within a period of about 9 days. So getting all of those appointments scheduled and structured around each other was certainly a challenge at the beginning. Once they were set, everyone's appointments continued at the same day and time, basically every 3 weeks. So it definitely settled into a pattern and got a lot more manageable as time went on. And the first and last appointments were also a big time commitment, because the first one and the last one were about an hour. So I'd have days where I would have 10 or 12 hours of appointments per day. Whereas when we came for the rechecks, those were half an hour or sometimes even, 15 minutes, like you were saying earlier, because we were just checking in on how's it going with Fluffy, and asking these questions. But if nothing's changed, they don't have a lot of questions, we kind of zoom through that. And I think that's encouraging when you talk about veterinarians or techs and their time commitment. You may have some time consuming things at the beginning. And the only reason those last appointments took longer was because I was giving that educational presentation, which itself was about half an hour. But if you're doing just a regular quick check-in with a client that you speak to regularly about a cat that you are talking about consistently, those are going to be pretty quick appointments. You're not going to have, at least from what I saw in this study, you're not going to have really huge, long, in-depth discussions. There's going to be a couple quick questions of things that have happened in the last few weeks, and then you'll move on.
Can you share with us the findings that came out of the study?
Of course. So I think the most interesting findings that we had were those people who were in the telehealth group and received those check-ins. They felt more knowledgeable in what their cat needed, and they felt more confident in their own management strategies for their cat. So that was encouraging. I think that really helped us to see that this could be something that's beneficial for caregivers and their cats. And then I saw that also to back up a little bit, one of the things we asked about in that survey was we used the feline musculoskeletal pain index, or FMPI, and we used the short form, and that's developed by researchers at NC State, and we used it with their permission, and it's a feline metrological pain instrument. So basically it's a questionnaire that asks caregivers questions about things like jumping and other mobility aspects for the cat, to get an idea of the cat's overall level of impairment. So we asked that at the beginning and at the end. And so what we found with that was that people whose cats were more impaired, based on that questionnaire, were more interested in using telehealth as well. So we saw a difference between our very interested and our somewhat interested groups that was statistically significant, and that those who were very interested, their cats were about 2 points higher on that impairment scale. So I think that was really interesting as well.
Did you ask in that survey if they preferred in-person consults or the telehealth?
I believe so. I'm trying to remember the exact question. Carly, do you remember exactly what we said on there? Or
we asked about interest. We've done other work that's been survey based, asking caregivers, interest in using telehealth for different appointment types. And they do show interest in clinic, in-person appointments for those, like, physical exams. Like, they understand, caregivers do understand it seems, the limitations and benefits of this, getting more support and help with like medication administration when they're at home, so that they can have, someone on the phone while they're doing it to maybe help them through the process. Weight management, that kind of thing. And so it did seem like they did understand what it would be useful for and what it wouldn't, which was really nice to see. So it's not like they're going to expect everything to be over, Zoom.
Yeah, because if I think about pet owners, and I think going back to when I had my vet rehab clinic, and even when I was in clinical practice as a veterinarian, how many cats and owners are so stressed when they come in. That owners are like, they've spent ages now trying to catch the cat, get the cat in the cat basket. We all know that, how to get a cat that doesn't want to go in a cat basket. So like for me, I'm just thinking pet owners are like, flip, if I don't have to do that, that'll be really great. So yeah, I just feel like there's there's some cats that are just fine. They'll go in and they're purring and they're happy. But there are a lot of cats that, it's really tricky to get them in the cat box. And then they get to the practice and they're so stressed. And that stress makes the owner stressed. And the more stressed the owner, that makes the cat stressed. So I can see a lot of owners actually just being really open to it for cats. Did you do studies just on cats, or did you do any on dogs too, to compare?
we just looked at dogs with this work.
Cats.
Yeah.
We looked at cats.
Or
You said
sorry,
dogs.
cats.
Yeah.
Wow, I had that backwards. Yeah, completely. Yes, just cats. Thoroughly
Because
over here.
I can see how it's more applicable to cat, like how caregivers and owners with cats would be more, more open to it than dogs, because it's easier to get a dog in a car and get them in the vet.
Yes, so absolutely. And there's been a lot of research showing this, that, a lot of cats don't come into the clinic. So if you, work in a clinical setting, you're going to see more dog appointments overall. And so because of that, and trying to get cats and their owners into the clinic, there's been a lot of research trying to understand barriers. Why aren't cat owners bringing their cats to the vet? And one major reason is stress. And so this is we know this, it's been shown over and over and over that stress is a really big barrier, among other things, but stress associated with finding their cat, putting their cat in the carrier, stress associated with travel, Once you get to the clinic, waiting in the waiting room is stressful with their cat. Getting, seeing their cat being handled during a physical exam is very stressful for cat owners. And so there's been a lot of research, not a lot, more and more, which kind of stems from my PhD work, looking at strategies to reduce stress for cats. And so telehealth is one of those strategies. Yeah, and actually, one of the first studies that Grace did when she started in my lab was looking at how video appointments versus in-person appointments impact cat stress parameters.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, that was actually really interesting. So with that study, we it was local, so we had a smaller sample size, and we actually examined the cats in person and examined them over Zoom. And we did have the owner do all the handling for both of those appointments to keep them as similar as possible. And we looked at measures of stress, so like the pupil dilation, respiration rate, that sort of thing. And we did find, as you would expect, that cats were calmer and less stressed. They showed less measures or less elevated stress measures when they were at home. And so that was really neat because that hadn't been shown before. And so we were able to show, yes, when we look at these, metrics of the cat's stress, we are seeing that they are, less stressed in the home as we would anticipate. And so that kind of allows us to build on that as we go forward, because we then have that base of, okay, well, we know this. Now, how can we, incorporate the telehealth to support that and make sure that they're, getting a good spectrum of care, basically.
Nice. For the listeners, so a lot of our listeners are vet rehab therapists, and a lot of their patients have mobility impairments. So I'd love for you to just go through some of the challenges that the cat owners were having with the environment and all those recommendations, like you were saying about the litter box and things like that, because you've done 63 times 4 of these, so you must have so much information about all of this and maybe things that we haven't thought about. So I'd love to pick your brain on that, and if you could share that with us, sort of the things that came up and the solutions that you offered, and maybe not, I know you weren't open to giving too much information, but what you would have said if you were able to.
Totally, yes, and you're right. There is a lot of information, so I'm trying to think through my brain of all of the different things that came up. I know we definitely had some people that talked about their cats struggling to get up on the couch or the bed, and so we talked about ramps and stairs quite a bit, and that was something that a lot of people had either thought about and not implemented yet, or there were a few people who hadn't thought of that. And it can be, I think the interesting thing with that is when you're looking up to, when I was making my presentation, I was like, okay, ramps and stairs for cats, and there's some very beautiful pictures, there's nice ones online, but it can really be as simple as like a little ottoman or a step stool or a cardboard box, as long as it's sturdy. It doesn't have to be something really fancy to help the cat get up off the ground onto the couch or the counter. Some people, their cats like to hop up on the counter for feeding time, and so they were trying to get them up on there. And a chair pulled up next to the counter can be enough for the cat. So people really are inventive with these things, and I think that's really neat. And it really helped when I was then providing the solutions to other people that I had already talked to. Several folks who had tried really inventive things. I was able to say, hey, it doesn't have to be really really fancy. You don't have to go buy a new thing. You can use something you already have in your home. And the same kind of thing goes for the dishes. I know there was one person who was asking about their cats eating and drinking. They were noticing they seemed to be struggling a little bit. And I said, just pop it up on a brick, on a little box. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to go get new dishes. Just put the dishes they have on some small thing to elevate it just a few inches. And they tried that and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so much better. This is amazing. Thank you. And it was really neat to see how much something that simple
Yeah.
helped. And so I think I'm trying to think what else. Heating mats are another thing that I offered to. I always was very careful to say get a pet specific heating mat so it doesn't get too hot. You don't want them to get burned or anything like that. Sometimes human ones can be definitely inappropriate for pets, but if you get a pet heating mat and you have that sitting in a bed that they can rest in, that can really help with the heat, can help with the joint pain that they might be experiencing. And putting a bed on the floor if they're struggling to get up or they don't feel like even using the step stool, giving them another spot to rest that's accessible to them. So that was another thing that I suggested. Trying to think if there's anything else. The
You
litter
mentioned litter
boxes. Yeah.
boxes. The
Yeah,
litter
we
box.
talked about that. Yes, there's a lot of litter box things. We had one person whose cat was peeing inappropriately, and we did a lot of troubleshooting. Not even just related to mobility, but other things that might be impacting that in the home. But one of the big things with litter boxes consistently across the board, even for cats without mobility issues, is most litter boxes are too small. They need to be about 1.5 times the length of your cat from their nose to the base of their tail, and that's a pretty big box. So I suggested getting like totes, like underbed totes or something like that, as long as the bottom's flat so that they're not wobbling about on an unstable base, and so it's not annoying to clean. A bigger box can really make a difference, because if their joints are stiff and they're trying to turn in a tiny little circle, that can be really challenging for these cats. And having low sides can help as well if they're really struggling to get in and out of the box. We had a couple cats that we had to talk about that. And cutting down the sides of an existing box is a way to, if your box is already big enough, but it's just too high, that can really help those cats quite a bit. So I definitely think that can make a difference. One kind of interesting thing that I wouldn't have thought of before, but came up as I was carrying out the study, the depth of the litter can sometimes impact the cat. So when you have cats with some really severe mobility issues, they may struggle with their balance. And we saw this with, I'm forgetting the term, I think it's CH is the shortened term, but it's the cats, it's a neurological
Cerebellar
disorder.
hyperplasia.
Thank you. Thank you. So the cerebellar cats, we had a couple of those in the study, and they're very wobbly. And so, especially for a cat like that, or one with really advanced arthritis, having a lighter layer of litter, so it's not as deep, can help them a little bit as well.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks for those tips.
Yeah, of course.
I'm interested to find out like what your feeling was around the owners that did the telehealth, because for me, if I think about my clients, doing telehealth really made them feel empowered. And I think it also just really improved the bond between the pet and them, because, we're talking them through things that they didn't really understand. And, we're asking them questions, and now suddenly they're realizing a whole lot of things that maybe they didn't realize before, or they weren't looking at before. And now suddenly they're more aware of it. So now they're watching the pet, they're watching the cat and how it's jumping up and all these things that maybe they wouldn't have if they were having continual consultations, and maybe they're stressed, they don't want to take their cat to the vet all the time. And like I said, we don't have sometimes that time to go through all of that. What was your findings and feelings regarding that?
Yeah, so I think kind of going back to when we talked about the results earlier, the fact that people were saying that they felt more knowledgeable, they felt like their management was more effective for their cat. I think that really does reflect that they were feeling like these appointments helped them. They were feeling like that improved what was going on in the home with their cat. And I think trying to think if we asked, I don't think we asked anything specifically as far as their bond with their cat per se, but I would say anecdotally that seemed to be something that people were, like you say, they were things they hadn't thought of, or they had thought of and hadn't done, as far as like the stairs. And so I think there were some improvements that they might not have done otherwise. And I don't know, I'm trying to think if there's anything else along the lines of that, because we didn't ask specifically about the bond with their cat. Carly, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on this while I ruminate on it for a moment more.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely something we could add to future research. There are cat owner bond scales that we've used in other research. So we could definitely incorporate that. I think another interesting thing would be looking at the veterinary client patient relationship and see how perceptions of their clinic and veterinarian change, just being given that support at home, but also, they're going to go in clinic. Does that help to, it'll obviously maintain that relationship, but it doesn't make it stronger. And does it actually make them come into the clinic more because they're receiving that support at home and you're strengthening that veterinarian client patient relationship? So I think that would be really interesting to look at as well.
Yeah, like it.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to expand on this research? What are the next plans?
Yeah, we are looking at, so kind of tying back into a lot of the things that we've talked about with veterinary reticence, one of the things is veterinarians being unsure of what can actually be gained over a telehealth appointment. And especially if you're talking about like teletriage, wondering what the owner can reliably collect at home. And so our next study that we're currently in the process of getting off the ground is going to be looking at measures that owners or caregivers can take at home on their cat. So respiratory rate, heart rate, checking the nose and eyes and skin. So kind of all the basic non-invasive things that you would expect in an exam. We're going to see if owners can reliably collect those measures at home. So we'll be comparing them to an expert and seeing, how reliable they are, and hopefully we can take that information to a veterinary audience, and be like, okay, these things are great. Owners can do these fantastically at home. These things maybe not so much, and so that can help veterinarians know what they can expect and what they can actually, request that a caregiver do at home in general.
And the way that you see that working is like somebody calls in and the consultations are full for the day, and somebody hops online quickly with the owner and says, can you just go through these things quickly to check whether does this cat or dog or whatever need an emergency appointment or doesn't it? That's sort of what you're thinking.
Potentially,
Nice.
yes, it could be used for that. Or if you're talking about something like a dermatology issue or obesity, if an owner is able to do a body condition score at home and we're on a cat diet plan, they can potentially help monitor that at home, and again, reduce some of those in-person check-ins that might be stressful. So there's a few different ways that you could take this, either kind of chronic issues or emergency issues, depending on what we find.
Nice. Do you have a message that you would hope to give all the vet rehab professionals that they can have a takeaway from your research? What message would you like to give them?
I think it's helpful. I think telehealth can really supplement in-person visits. I really liked what you were saying about that kind of bond with the client. I think Carly was saying that, because I did find that the people I was interacting with really seemed, happy to see me. They seemed to enjoy the appointments. We were all kind of sad when it ended. And even recently, I had someone write me, and they were asking a question about some shelter research. So I refer them to my colleague, but they were saying how having these check-ins had improved their cat's quality of life in the last few years. And I think if we can maintain that great bond with our clients and with their pets, that's just going to make sure that that pet has a better welfare, and that's going to make sure that we have that really strong, good relationship with that client, and the cat's getting the care that they need, hopefully sooner.
Yeah. I mean, I know all your studies were done on cats, but I mean, a lot of this is applicable to dogs too, right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and there has been a little bit of research with dogs. I believe there's been a project looking at using telehealth appointments for post-spay neuter checkups for dogs. But there's definitely been less emphasis on it for dogs, just due to the fact that a lot of dog owners bring their dogs in. But absolutely, this can be used to supplement care. And there's just not a lot of people doing work in this area. We need a lot more work to really try to understand where telehealth technologies can be really beneficial for the pet, the owner, as well as the veterinarian and the veterinary staff members, and where it's absolutely not going to work. And so we need research, right, to kind of inform that, so we have evidence to show what's working and what's not. So hopefully, as we move forward more and more, we'll see more and more work in this area.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks so much, Carly and Grace, for sharing all that information. I think it's super exciting. And like you said, we need the research, because especially for those vets that are not keen, if we've got the research, we show them this is how it works, this is how it doesn't work, and then they'll go ahead. They're more likely to do it. But it's the unknown that they're scared of, If I do this and this doesn't work, then it's going to make more work for me. So yeah, thank you for all the research you're doing. And yeah, thanks for your time. It's been great chatting.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, Paul Prosper. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast to you for free, so please go and check them out, paulprosper.com. Don't forget to bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit. It's on Saturday, the 31st of October, 2026. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Online Pet Health members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com. And if you want access to our free membership, we update the webinars in this area every 3 months. You can sign up at onlinepethealth.com/free.